Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly. Today I'm chatting with Elise Longbottom, the Global Brand Director at Crocs. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on. Elise has over 15 years of experience across global brands like North Face, Burberry, LVMH, Condé Nast, with expertise ranging from apparel to direct to consumer, across strategic and operational execution. So, lots of diverse experience in your career, which I'm very excited to jump into. Before we go into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm really happy to be here, Natalie. Thank you. I joined Crocs in May, and I'm leading sort of the brand strategy and kind of what the Crocs brand stands for, and all of our new product launches, and figuring out exactly what we want our message to be, our tone, how we're connecting with consumers, how we're showing up. And really, we have so much excitement happening in this building. There is no shortage of ideas or really anything that is impossible in these walls. And so it's a really, really fun place to be. And it's my job to sort of sharpen and make sure that we are staying really on track with what our goals are for our business and our brand.
Amazing. And then how about outside of work at Crocs? What does your life looks like outside of being a marketing girly?
Outside of work, I live in Boulder here in Colorado, which I love because there's access to the outdoors. We live about a block and a half from the mountains, and I
Oh
have
my
two
goodness.
children and my husband, and we have a dog and two cats, and we're just really into the outdoors and cooking. And we also really love to travel. And I grew up in France, and so being 45 minutes away from an international airport just allows that access to either coast here in the US and or overseas. So we really, really love where we live right now.
Amazing. And does your whole family wear Crocs now all the time?
We've been Crocs fans. I will say it was very much an easy yes to joining this team because I remember I bought my first pair of Crocs when I was in college, and it was just a few years after they launched. And at first I was definitely like, what are these? And then as soon as I put them on, I thought, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. And it's really fun watching people have that moment. Anyone that might think, oh gosh, these are not for me. And the second you try them on, you're like, all right, now I understand. And it was really fun. They were the first pair of shoes that my kids could put on themselves, which was a really big milestone. My husband now wears them all the time, and just everything from just the classic icon to really fun partnerships that we're doing where people are just so stoked to wear them on their feet. It's just a brand that brings a ton of joy, a ton of happiness. And I just feel really, really lucky that every day it's part of my world and where I get to focus my attention.
Yeah, they are really fun shoes and comfortable. I've also owned Crocs. And what I also love seeing is when I see someone out wearing Crocs and they have the gibbets. Is that what they're called?
Jibbitz, yes.
Yes. And I feel like you can tell about that person based off of the gibbets on their Crocs. And I just feel like that's so fun. I remember when I had my Crocs too, I would like collect little gibbets. But I feel like that's such a fun thing. And I also always see the collaborations Crocs is doing as well on social. I feel like the brand voice is so fun. And you guys are really playful with it, which I absolutely love.
Thank you. Great to hear.
So, in your role at Crocs right now, leading brand strategy, I know a lot of marketing girlies really love the idea of working in brand marketing. It sounds super exciting. It sounds super creative. I know you gave us like a little overview of what your role looks like, but what is brand marketing to you?
Brand marketing to me is really balancing the art and science of how to connect with a consumer. There's a lot of data that we have that will give us information on, okay, here's what people are buying, here's what they're interested in, here's how they're consuming media, here's what's getting their attention. And then there's just your own brand truth of who you are and what you stand for and how you want to show up in the world. And I think that the art and science of connecting those two and making sure that we're not forcing anything to anyone that might not want to hear from us, but we are showing up in a way that is going to meaningfully connect with anyone who's hoping to be part of the Crocs world is really what the brand strategy is. You have to be good with numbers, but you also have to have intuition and sensitivity to aesthetics, creative, any kind of partner that you're working with or where you're showing up. the ability to take very, very complex notions and sort of distill them and simplify them for teams to get behind them and then put things in motion is, I think, a big part of what I do and what my team does.
I love that explanation. And how about for you? I know you just started at Crocs earlier this year, but what has been like your favorite project or campaign that you've gotten to work on so far?
Honestly, what's really, really cool is I feel like I time travel. I have to say, I feel like I'm looking at what we've just done recently and how that's working and how, what the response is. And working with our product team, 2 years out. I'm in 2027 part of the
Oh my
time right
goodness.
now. Looking at kind of the innovations and what's possible and what that means and how the landscape is going to evolve. So that to me is, I know that's not one particular project or launch, and I probably wouldn't be able to speak about it here anyway. But I think just the ability to time travel in a brand strategy role is really, really fun and really cool.
Yeah, that is crazy thinking that far out in advance. I remember when I first started doing marketing and learning, like, oh my gosh, you plan like Christmas launches like 6 months in advance. But even thinking like a full year, 2 years, even longer in the future is
It is. It is. And we have really great partners and we do a lot of future forecasting. And it's really interesting to and it's very interesting at Crocs because Crocs is also a brand that is so innately connected to culture and what's happening right now. And I think we have a very unique ability to strike right in the moment. So it's pretty cool to know that there's a pretty big engine behind what's coming in the future and what is happening right now in the moment. I think that there are a few brands in the world that master that the way that Crocs do.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, Elise. So I know you're in brand now at Crocs, but that's not where you started your career. You actually started in sales at Condé Nast. So can you bring us back a little bit? I want to get to how you got this incredible career within brand, which again I know a lot of marketing girlies aspire to have, but that's not where you started. So speaking of time traveling, let's go the other way. We'll go backwards and take me back to the start of your career.
Thank you. Okay, well, yes, I started at Condé Nast in sales, but actually, I did internships at Condé Nast during college. So I went to Northwestern University just north of Chicago, and I was an undeclared major at first, but I took quite a few courses in journalism and just loved the Medill School and ended up actually studying comp lit. But I entered into the world of journalism and I did internships on the journalism side. And that was really fun. But the sales team always seemed to have such a blast. I loved how you know, journalism was more about getting to the story and the truths, whereas the sales team were more about like, how are we connecting with brands? How are we making sure that this audience is seeing what they want to see and the brands that want to connect with them that can show up in our space? And at the time, it was really just print advertising. We weren't even selling like the digital units at that time at Vogue House in the UK. I should probably say I'm American, but I grew up in France. So as soon as I graduated, I actually moved to London,
Oh my goodness.
and so it's yes, so I was in the UK, that's where I started my actual real postgraduate job at Condé Nast, but I started on the sales team, and I'll say it was pretty tough. This was 2008. The financial crisis had just happened, and I had these very kind of big ideas of, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna live the Devil Wears Prada, it's gonna be so great, I'm gonna work at Vogue," and it was really, really tough. It was people were not picking up the phone in terms of, wanting to spend money on ads. And I will say also, my job, I was selling the classified ads at the very back of the magazine. So it was not very glamorous. I wore a headset, but I will say, as my first job, it really set me up for the future because my job entailed making dozens of phone calls every single day and hearing no, no, no over and over and over again. And you just had to keep going. And I think it was that perseverance and that creative thinking of like, well, why are they saying no? Maybe I need to make a more compelling advertorial section. Maybe I need to think about calling people in different industries or different markets even to have a presence in British Vogue. And those strategies really worked and it was really rewarding. I think that as soon as you enter in the workforce and something is easy, it makes the rest of your road pretty hard. And so for me to kind of work in classified ad sales in 2008 post financial crisis really set me up for having a really strong work ethic and drive and tenacity that I think built my success for the rest of my career.
I love that part of your story because I 100% agree that sales is such a great way to start your marketing career. I also started in sales and hearing the rejection over and over definitely builds thick skin. I wanted to quit that job I had like every single day. Like, yeah, you get to learn to deal with rejection. You have to learn to be creative to like get the yes and to overcome the objection. And I think it's such a great place to start. Also, something to be proud of because I know sometimes girls like maybe want to leave off the sales experience because it's not marketing related or like are grudging through it. But I love that perspective of how it was like an absolute asset for you to start your career with that.
I will say, I think for anyone listening, if you haven't worked in sales yet, there was this professor in college, and his name was Professor Rain. And I remember everyone wanted to take his class. He was this like comms guru. His son was a writer on Friends, it like which was a big deal at the time. That was like the show. And someone asked him on the very last day, they're like, if we should do any job out of college, what should it be? And everyone kind of waited to hear, like, ooh, what is he going to say? What is he going to say? And he goes, you should work at a used car lot. And everyone was like, what? Here we are, like spending a fortune on, a private university degree, and we're being told to work at a used car lot. And then he goes, you. And he pointed to someone in the audience. He goes, you drive a Volvo and it's white. And she was like, oh my God, yes. And then he was like, you drive. I mean, he could name the color and brand for multiple people. I think he got one wrong and it was like the color. He was like, you will learn more selling used cars than you will in any other field. And that will serve you for the rest of your life. And I never kind of forgot that because to me, that was my used car sales job. That was like understanding, it was picking up on tone. It was thinking about what's the angle? What does someone want? That will always serve you in your life, not in a manipulative way, but just in a perceptive way where you have to sharpen those skills and pay attention. So I will just say maybe it's not always the most glamorous, but it will build skills that you will use in any relationship and in any career for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And they say too, it's not just selling items, but it's selling your ideas to a team, it's selling yourself to a
Yes,
role. There's so many different implications.
exactly.
Still confused how he knew everybody's car though. That is
I
insane.
don't know. Watching people park and then it's like his party trick at the end. I'd like to think that he's just that good, but yeah.
Just secretly sitting in the parking lot taking notes of everyone's cars. Okay, so you had your stint there in sales before moving over to the luxury space, over to Burberry. And this is where you kind of dipped your toes into more marketing. Talk to me about that transition.
Yeah. So at the time at Condé Nast, there was not really like a dedicated events team, but we did a lot of events. Or if there was, they were really, really small. So they were always asking for team members to volunteer, help out at different events that we did. So there was the GQ Man of the Year Awards, the Condé Nast Traveler Awards, and the Glamour Awards. There were all these great, great, great events. And I would always put my hand up and really loved helping out. I just loved the energy in the room, seeing everyone come together and the details and the creative expressions in a physical space that I just thought I really love events. And I saw I think it was events coordinator role that was open at Burberry. And I applied for that job. And with the experience that I had gained and sort of the passion that I felt about it, I was hired to join the Burberry events team, which was a very, very cool role because Burberry did a ton of events. This was at their global headquarters in London. And there were big events from runway shows. I have a really cool picture standing right behind Anna Wintour, which
Oh my
I
goodness.
love. It was just like you would see everything and everyone, and you can't really describe the energy in a fashion show space. It's so spectacular and it was really very cool. But we also did small events like boardroom dinners and being a fly on the wall there. I mean, it was really, you get to know everyone in the building when you work in events. And the scale from, very large to very small was also fantastic learning. I will say I had a boss, her name is Emma Jane Taylor. She's still actually Webster now. She still works in events and production. And I learned from her the unbelievable attention to detail. Till this day, I check things 3 times just because you never know how you might miss something. And events are just a very exposed role, and everyone only gets one card on their seat. So even just one is cricket out of 1,000. That one person didn't have a perfect experience, and so I think that that role really allowed me to hone in on some just this high standard desire for high standard that was really instilled in that role. And then because like I said, you kind of get to know everyone. I noticed that there was a media role that opened up on the team. And I loved events. It was really fun. But I also kind of really missed that world of publishing and connecting to a consumer on a much bigger scale than just at events. So when I saw that the media planning and buying role was open internally, I already knew the director of marketing and comms from all the events and, spoke with my boss, and she was really supportive and allowed me to apply internally for that role. So that's how I moved back into the media world at Burberry. And so sometimes it's about like getting a foot in the door and learning and then seeing the landscape and then going, actually, that's where I want to be. So I would advise anyone to just kind of keep that in mind that, keep your eyes open because opportunities might present themselves. And that one did. And I'll say that was right place at the right time because at the time our budgets were really focused on just the fashion category. And all of a sudden, we took back kind of fragrance and beauty in house. We had timepieces, we had eyewear, we had children's wear. There are all these things that really made it a huge job that probably if all that had happened before I got the job, I probably would have been very unqualified and never would have got it. But it was right place, right time where these things kind of built. So from where I started on day one to what I was managing sort of 2 years in was like exponential and such a cool opportunity to think about different consumers from the highest sort of aspiration of your fashion pieces to more accessible entry points with beauty and eyewear, and it was really really fun, really cool role.
It sounds incredible, and I can see the excitement as you are talking about it, how, I guess not fun is like a trivial word to use for it, but how fun that role seemed. I'm also curious if you have any advice. You mentioned that you kind of got to know everybody because you were working events and that helped you to then like internally network to be able to get this opportunity. Do you have any advice when it comes to networking internally? Because you can be put in a situation where you are surrounded by lots of people at events and maybe that you get to know people, but what advice do you have when it comes to cultivating those relationships and then leveraging them in the right way when the time is right?
Honestly, this is not going to sound revolutionary. It's very simple, but it is very true. Just be really kind, like be helpful. I think, especially working in a luxury industry or a fashion industry, you're working with a lot of egos. And I think that some people might have a stance of, exclusivity or elitism that, the second you take that stance, it's kind of it builds up walls. And I think that I was always someone that was very enthusiastic, that was very willing to help. No task was too small for me to step in and say, "Of course I got you, no problem." I think that I built a reputation of people being like, I can approach Elise and she's going to be helpful and she's going to be honest and she's going to be kind about it. And I think that once, you have that character quality that is in practice every day, it starts to build a lot of trust. And so I would just say, be a good person. I think it's really that simple. It's just like be kind and courteous and be really respectful to everyone, regardless of their title, of if they're the most important person in the room or if they're, a caterer, wait staff. It doesn't matter. You treat everyone with respect and kindness. And I think that really goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that's incredible advice. And sometimes too, I think it's maybe you want like the golden ticket answer of like do this thing and then all these doors unlock. But I really do feel like just from talking to so many women that just being a kind human can take you so, so, so far. And also too, being kind without looking for something in return, right? The
Yes.
opportunity came and it was the right time. It wasn't like you were doing this because you wanted a specific outcome in exchange.
And I think people can kind of sniff that out, right? Like, and I think that it's it's a consistency factor. If you're always this way, then people know, like, okay, this is just kind of how you are. And that's really great. If it's very selective, then it's kind of questionable, like, well, are you really this way? Or are you putting this on? So I would just say, like, don't try to be someone you're not. Like, be genuine, but be aware of what are your unique superpowers. And, one of my unique superpowers is that I'm very extroverted. I love talking with people. I love connecting with people. I love understanding what their needs are and helping them get there, And I think that I would just say everyone should maybe do a little, not soul searching, but maybe an exercise of like wake up in the morning and set your intentions that will help kind of build patterns of that ultimately form your character and how you show up every day.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so you had quite a stint at Burberry. You were there for over 4 years. What was like your maybe your biggest takeaway after leaving that role and maybe kind of taking us into the next opportunity that you took?
Definitely the people. I mean, gosh, I left in 2015, so almost 10 years ago. No, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. See, I told you I time travel. I don't know what year. Um, and I am still super, super close to, we call ourselves the OGs. It's a group of friends that we all work together you know, at Burberry, and we kind of came up together and grew up together. And they're just an amazing group of friends. And same thing, old mentors, old bosses, like staying in touch with everyone because the people are awesome. And it's unbelievable to see the success track that people have had that I worked with at Burberry. You never know where people are going to go in life, but have fun with the people you're with. And you never know when you're going to cross paths again. I had, one of my old coworkers, Musa Tarek, who was part of how I got the job at the North Face. He put in a good word, for me to the CMO at the time. And that really helped. And I hadn't spoken with him in years. Like there are things like that that you just, have fun with the people that you're working with because they will continue to be bright spots, not in like a necessarily a networking way, but also just a human relationship way. And I'm, like I said, still some of my best friends till this day are, my coworkers that I worked with on that team.
That's amazing. And at this time, so your career, and we'll get into some of the next roles, it continues to grow. You go to LVMH, you spend 7 years at Previous Connection, you go to the North Face and also Crocs. Something that you had mentioned to me prior is that careers in marketing evolve not just on your expertise in an industry and ability to leverage skills and tools, but also the ability to think as a human and the existential realities of who we're trying to reach and how they experience the world, which is quite a beautiful and eloquent thought. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more to me?
Oh gosh. I wrote my senior thesis on existentialism. So this is where I always have to like, bring myself, like not be so heady all the time. But I think it kind of comes back to, I think I want to answer that with, so when I grew up, so I was born in the US and I moved to France when I was 5. And I felt like in France, I was always the American girl. And I felt in America that I was always the French girl. And so I kind of, what really brought me into kind of this equalizer place is when it was brands. It was when I noticed, like, hey, she's wearing Doc Martens and I'm wearing Doc Martens, whether that was in France or the States, or like, I have an East Pack and he has an East Pack. Like, we had these things in common. And I think that that's when I really started to notice like the power of brands and the power of marketing as this sense of your existence, as your ability to self-actualize. And I think that, yes, it's important to have skills in social media and communications and good writing skills and leveraging different tools that are available to us today. That's important. But your ability to think as a human and think as a person is arguably the most important thing that you need to be able to do. And that's why I kind of go back to the romance of literature and film and really just understanding what drives us, what motivates us. How are we as humans experiencing this one wonderful life that we have? And I think that there are some truths that will always remain, and there are also the ways we experience life is evolving, and understanding the difference between those two is very important. Whether you're new in your career, as a 22-year-old, or whether you're, a 52-year-old leading an entire team. These are things that will always need to be thought about. And yeah, it's just the landscape is evolving. Like when I was in high school, I had to wear brands to express who I was. Today we have social media. I don't have to buy something from a brand to show an affiliation or an association from a value standpoint or from a status standpoint. I can just repost something on my account, right? So
Mm.
it's just the landscape is evolving in a way where I like talking to people who get that, who are thinking about that. Because at the end of the day, yes, we have tools evolved. There's AI, I mean, we're constantly being targeted for our attention, and there is never going to be more than 24 hours in a day. And so, how are we spending that time and making sure as brands we're not wasting people's time and making sure as consumer that we're spending our time wisely is like the question that I wake up with every day. And that's the kind of thinking that I really want marketers that are coming into the world to really internalize and think, yes, skills are important, but the way you think and the way you view the world and consumers and people is just as important, if not more important.
Yeah. I really that is a very, I'll say, original thought as someone who has interviewed hundreds of marketing girlies. I've actually never heard that take, and I think that's so important, and I think more important now than ever, like you mentioned AI, right? We don't have to think for ourselves anymore, really. We don't want to in a lot of ways. I'm still open to AI, but I actually use it a lot less now because when ChatGPT first came out, I found myself like using it for a lot of decisions or asking what it thought. And like, even sometimes I feel like we take the public consensus as our opinion, right? Everybody on social media is saying this thing, then that's what I think and that's what I feel. But is that really your perception of it? Is that just like all the content around you that you're consuming? But I absolutely do believe, like hearing you say that just reminds me of like how I think Sky Society and Marketing Girly grew was from like my unique perspective and the things that I believed and my own thoughts that were mine. And I often think back like, wow, if AI existed now, like how different would what I've built become? Yeah.
I think we're all going to be watching this space and seeing, and it's impacting every industry. It's not, just marketing, it's education, it's finances. I mean, it's going to get really interesting. And, I know that this is not an AI podcast, so I won't even go down that rabbit hole, but I like to view it as something that can, like anything, it depends how you use it. There's a
Yeah.
really wonderful story that I was just talking about with a friend, which is, there are two wolves in our life, and one is, evil and greed driven and angry and jealous and has all of these qualities. And then the other wolf is kind and optimistic and helpful. And these two wolves are in a battle with each other. And this is like a grandfather telling his grandson, and the grandson says, "Well, which wolf wins?" And the grandfather says, "The one you feed." And I think it's kind of that, you
Mm.
know.
Ooh, that's so interesting. I like that story.
I think about that with AI a lot. I'm like,
Yeah.
which wolf do I want to feed as I explore these tools?
For you, like you mentioning that this is a really important thing, important skill. How do you practice, or are there any habits that you have that you feel like help you maintain that, that the critical thinking skill of yours?
Honestly, I think, yes, I read a lot that, helps keep me informed. So things like Substack, whatever, listen to podcasts. I'm kind of interested in people's perspective and facts and information, but I have to balance that with just watching. I love going to the airport. I love it. I will get there early just to watch people. I'm like, what are they wearing? What are they eating? Are they on their phones? Are they talking? Like, just being able to observe people. I look at my children and see what's sparking their curiosity or their joy. All of this is something that I don't have to read in an article to understand. And I think continuing to experience real moments in your life and being, and conscientiously, is that a word? Consciously absorbing them is a really important practice. And I think that helps keep me attuned, is not just the information that I'm ingesting, but also experiencing the world every day and watching it and kind of noticing things, I think is really, really important.
I bet that is more rare of a habit than you would think because like what are most of us doing at the airport? We're on our phones. We're not looking up. We're not watching other people. We're thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about, okay, I need to get to the gate. Now I need to get my Starbucks. Now I need to wash my luggage. I want to get here and then I want to like whatever. Like we're all and I actually for me, my New Year's resolution this year was to lift my head up more. To talk to like, if I'm in line at the grocery store and someone has something and I can make a comment on it because I was like always like, yeah, my head's down or I'm looking straight or like I feel like so many of us do that without really thinking about it.
And be curious. I'm as I
Yeah.
said, I'm an extrovert. I will ask someone who's like standing in the coffee line and like someone just walked up and then I was like, why did you order it on your app? Why did you use that? Why like I'll ask or I'll say, what's the most popular drink people are getting right now? I feel like I'm always talking to everyone. And I'm
That's a
like,
great
yeah,
skill
fine,
though.
but maybe not. I don't know. I'm like, just ask questions because I don't know. Maybe I'm just innately very, very curious. But I would just encourage people, maybe just ask one stranger a question every day. And I
Yeah,
bet that people would say, gosh, I don't even remember the last time I interacted with a stranger. But
exactly.
fun.
Yeah. Um, wow, you got me inspired. I really love that perspective. And it's just, I think just such a great reminder, especially as, yeah, we're always looking, okay, how can I learn this new software? How can I take this class? How can I sharpen this skill? But really just going back to the basics of like being observant and thinking critically. And those are things that I think, especially within brand, I can imagine being immensely powerful tools.
Thank you.
Okay, Elise. So the next couple years in your career were at LVMH, Proving Connection, and North Face before going over to Crocs. I'm not sure if do you want to kind of touch on each of those, or was there maybe like one of those roles that you feel like was really significant to you in your career?
It's really funny. Peruvian Connection is probably the one where everyone goes, huh, I don't know what that is. I think people have heard of LVMH. For those listening, that's Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. So it's one of the biggest luxury kind of houses or companies in the world. They own Dior, Fendi, and a lot of champagne brands. And I worked in Champagne, Veuve Clicquot, Dom Perignon. There's just tons and tons of world-class, real brand powerhouses there. And I can touch on that really, really briefly. I got a phone call saying, we're looking for someone who has an expertise in marketing and that also speaks French. Guys, continue to learn your languages. You never know when one might be the reason you get a phone call. And I thought, gosh, well, I'm at Burberry. Why would I want to go anywhere else? And they said, well, it's not fashion, it's champagne. And I thought, oh
Ugh.
gosh, I got to take this call because I'm a huge foodie. And so I spent a couple years there. But then on a personal note, I had kind of rekindled a relationship with my husband. We were friends in college and saw each other again at my friend, actually his sister's wedding. 6 years after graduation, he was living in Boulder, Colorado, and I was in London, and we started this long distance
Oh my
relationship.
goodness.
And I kind of was like, well, obviously you're going to move to London. What am I going to do in Boulder, Colorado? But the more I came to visit, the more I just fell in love with the mountains and the outdoors, and the people are just incredible. And so I ended up moving here. So I left a job that I really, really loved. I loved leading marketing in the UK for Veuve Clicquot. It was just so fun. And I could go on and on and on about it. But I got here and my expertise was in fashion and luxury space. And, Boulder is not necessarily known for those fields. So I ended up meeting with the founder of Proving Connection, who was a connection through the family, through my husband's family. And I was so inspired by this founder. She was an anthropologist and just knew so much about culture and textiles and the Andes, and she just was talking about this incredible brand that she founded, Proving Connection. And my mother-in-law had given me a sweater from this brand. And even having been at Burberry for years, I'd never seen a piece of knitwear like it. It had hand-painted yarns. There were hundreds of colors that if you look up close, they were beautiful colors, but from far, it was like this beautiful kind of brown sweater. And it was just the whole thing about Proving Connection is just look closer and you'll be so surprised by what you see in the quality and the craftsmanship. And I thought, gosh, well, I've always worked at really big brands. I never worked at a smaller one. And I would love to have that experience because part of me wondered, like, hey, everyone picks, when you call from Burberry, people pick up the phone. It's a lot harder to do that from a brand that people haven't necessarily heard of. So, really wonderful experience there. And it was a small team. So, I would say working at a company like Burberry where the teams are massive and you really have like one function that you stay focused on. If you work in a smaller company, you get to wear so many hats. And that's an expression that they use there all the time is we wear many hats here. Understanding everything from, our inventory management to even supply chain to the design process to things that I had been a little bit closed off from in other roles. I was able to really, really learn a business end to end and ended up staying there for 7 years. I mean, it flew by. And of course there was COVID. I had 2 children. I mean, it was a period of my life that I think this idea of time seems very fluid, but I loved it. And it was really cool to work for a family owned business and seeing how decisions are made so differently in founder run and family owned businesses versus big publicly traded companies. And I think that's a really important learning as well is just, that diversity and just making sure that everyone kind of wants to work for the big brands that everybody knows and it'll look good on your LinkedIn, but you might sometimes even learn more from the smaller companies that are really hustling to make things happen and who really, really passionately love their consumers because every single one counts. So that was a great experience as well.
Yeah. I love hearing that perspective. Again, just because I know, of course, everyone wants to work at the Burberry out of college, right? That's what everyone wants right away. You want to work at the big brands, but there is equal, if not more, to learn at smaller brands sometimes, just because you get to be so much closer to like you said, the decision making, and you get to wear a lot of different hats. And so it's and hearing you kind of go the opposite, where sometimes people go from like the smaller brands and breaking their way into the bigger brands, you kind of did the opposite path. I think is really interesting to hear that you also kind of got value on both sides of working at the big companies where you got to be in a room with really big important people to kind of also working on the family side.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I
Uh,
think that kind of then brings me to my next experience, which was so funny. Like, talk about just not really, I think all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, I'm in Boulder, Colorado. And I worked at Proving Connection before remote work was a thing. So I was remote then for 7 years. And I have to say, as an extrovert, that was really hard to work from home every day. I'm someone that likes to be in person. I like to be with the team. I know not everybody does, but I really do. And so after 7 years of remote work, I saw that the brand director role at the North Face was open and they're based here in Denver. And so I was really excited to see that because I thought, well, not only is this a brand, I have a picture of me on the first day of, it's not the first day, actually. It was probably, I was wearing a Nuptse jacket. So it must have been little, but it was really early in college years. I was like a freshman and I have this old, like, North Face jacket on. And so it was for me a heritage brand, not just, for everyone, but for me personally, it was a brand that I really loved. And I just got so excited that there was an opportunity to join a brand that mattered a lot to me. And this is where I would say for anyone listening, I took this shot as like, I am not going to waste this chance. You'd be surprised how many people come to an interview and they're unprepared. I wanted to make sure that if I had 30 minutes to speak with a recruiter at the North Face, that I was going to be ready as if I was speaking to the president of the company. So the second I got confirmation that I had an interview, I obsessively researched everything. I mean, what have they been up to? What have they been launching? I, went through all of their social media accounts, any PR article that I could find. I even read their quarterly earnings reports for the last 2 years to
oh my
understand
god.
what issues are they up against, what's happening with wholesale, what's happening with distribution, what's happening with, the different markets. I mean, I went into the store in downtown Boulder. I went into REI. I went into Dick's Sporting Goods to see how the brand is showing up differently in different environments. I was ready. And this was just a 30-minute screener call. So I will say, even if whether or not that information comes up, your level of confidence when you're speaking to someone will be much higher when you're really well prepared. And I think that, it really helped set me up for success because I did get hard questions. And I think that I answered them with ease because I was so excited about the opportunity. I also manifested it. I remember folding laundry and saying out loud, I'm going to get this job.
I love
So it was
I'm
so
gonna
I
get
will
this
just
job.
say
And you
Yes.
did.
And I did, and that was so cool. I loved, loved, loved my time at the North Face. I met lifelong friends. My boss, the person who really gave me my shot was Bethany Evans. She's now the CMO at Roan. So it's you just never know how the world is going to play out, but it was just everything I dreamt for it to be and more. It was so fun to be part of it and to spend time in the outdoors and to have multiple moments where you go, am I actually working right now? Like, is this work? And just that spirit of never stop exploring is something that I embody and want to instill in my children and our family. So to kind of live a brand that is very closely tied to your personal values, I think is important as well.
Yeah. And just hearing that little story of you doing all that extra preparing, I think is such great advice for anyone on the job search. I always feel like when people think about preparing for an interview, they think about studying themselves or studying how to answer like commonly asked interview questions, and they forget how important it is to research the company. And I think the way you did it is like 100 out of 10, like looking at
That's probably
everything.
true. I don't think everyone but I don't know if there's that one moonshot where you're like,
Yeah.
this is it. Like, and I will also say, I will admit that was not the first time that I applied to a job at VF Corporation. This was the fourth time because I saw that they were here in Denver. I wanted to be in person. And I just thought they have such great brands and they're, here 45 minutes away from my doorstep. There's got to be a way that I can come in and be part of this. And I didn't even get a phone call. I didn't get an email, you know? And you
Mhm.
start to kind of self doubt. You're like, gosh, am I not worthy? Am I not even someone to speak to? It's not about that. It's just that there are hundreds and hundreds of applicants. I
Yeah.
once posted a maternity leave cover for my team, and we had to take the job down after 2 days because we got 300 applicants, literally 300 in 2 days. So
Oh,
don't take it personally. I would just say don't let that deter you from continuing to apply. And I would say really make sure that if you know anyone who knows anyone, use your LinkedIn network, and don't be shy and say, hey, I've applied for a job here. It looks like you have this connection who works there too. Is there any chance you can introduce me? You don't have to know someone there. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn is that you have these degrees of separation where you can kind of breadcrumb it until you find a way in. And I would say it's really important to do that because, again, LinkedIn and AI, they've just made it so easy to just hit apply
mhm.
and it auto loads that it just means that now there's hundreds, if not thousands of people in the pool. And it's hard to get noticed. So it's really important to have that human connection where possible too.
Yeah. And when you do get the interview, make the most of it because
Yeah,
it doesn't come around too often. And even like you said, for you, you applied 4 times. So once you did get it, you're not gonna do anything except everything you possibly can to make the most of that opportunity.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, research the companies. I think that's incredible advice. Normally the advice that I give is like for screening, you can do a lot, but you don't need to do anything crazy. But once you get like an actual interview with somebody, I think everything that you mentioned is perfect of like going above and beyond, learning their marketing, going in store if you can, looking at their social media. If you're interviewing for an email marketing role, go subscribe to their emails. Like doing all
Exactly.
those things is so important. And again, I just feel like people, when they think of preparing for interview, they think of it the opposite way. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? We think about ourselves versus like looking up and looking around.
It's so true. It's so, so true.
Yeah. All right, Elise. Well, we've touched on so much in today's episode. We've time traveled all over the place and gone through so many different roles. Is there any other advice you'd like to share with marketing girlies who maybe want to have a marketing career like yours?
I would just say I know that this is a really overwhelming time for everyone. We're just kind of living between our phones and what we're watching on our screens and streaming and seeing a lot happening in the world and also trying to figure out how am I going to live my life? How am I going to self-actualize and pay rent or get those boots that I want or, go and travel to Greece, for instance, Natalie. I know you were there recently.
Yes.
And I would just say, it's be patient and don't give up and just take moments every day to remind yourself that you are amazing and have so much to bring And I think that intentional practicing of just being really mindful and aware of, I have worth, I have value, and there's so much that I can bring. And I think that that energy ends up manifesting a lot of, really wonderful open doors. So I think, yeah, just making sure that we choose to go into the world and be optimistic and believe that anything is possible and you will make things happen for yourself. I think that that's just something to really remember. It might seem, kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to sound all like Zen or whatever, but the truth is that you can click a button 100 times, but it only takes one to really, really make it a difference for you. And you are the constant factor. Everything else is changing around you. You're the only constant. So how can you make sure that you feel good about yourself and how you are showing up? Because that will come across as opportunities present themselves.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Elise, for coming on Marketing Girly and sharing your career story. It has just been so inspiring to hear how you followed your curiosity all throughout your career and how you just like jumped around from different industries. And honestly, I just feel so inspired chatting with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Natalie. And yeah, I love Marketing Girly. This was so fun. And I'm really, really honored to help your audience decide what's best for them and their next move in life. Thank you.